Virtual On is a real achievement on the Dreamcast, with its gorgeously rendered characters, stunningly implemented special effects, and non-stop 60 frames per second action. Each machine is meticulously designed, lending each and every one of them a unique identity, but it's not only the way they look that gives Virtual On its special character. Like I've mentioned, the special effects also play a huge role in portraying the minute-to-minute gameplay. The screen is littered with projectiles and particles that bring each encounter to life and helps elevate the action to an extraordinary level. But the real star of the show is the frame rate. It is 60 frames per second without a hint of slowdown anywhere. No matter how many things are on the screen at any one time, slowdown can be the difference between victory or defeat in a game like Virtual On for the player, and to see it running in this fashion is a true testament to the talent of the team behind it. If there is one thing the Dreamcast is well known for, it's for the sheer amount of fantastic fighting games that made it to the system. Although Dead or Alive 2 is nowhere near one of the greatest from a gameplay perspective, when you look at its technical aspects, it's a real visual spectacle on the Dreamcast. I'm not sure what kind of wizardry the developers employed, but nearly 20 years later, Dead or Alive 2 still looks sublime on the Dreamcast. The only thing that holds it back by today's standards is simply its resolution, but other than that, it is still surprisingly impressive seeing it up and running. Each fighter moves and interacts in a completely believable fashion, which results in the gameplay not only looking but ultimately feeling smooth as well. Adding to the overall presentation of the experience are the extremely well crafted environments, which in all honesty are the real highlight of the game. From each reflection to the way in which the lighting reacts to your movement, it helped lend a level of realism to each location that up until that point was severely lacking in the genre. Like I mentioned, it's nowhere near the best fighter on the system, but when it comes to looks, Dead or Alive 2 has got it all. By far the best aspect of Echo on the Dreamcast was its visuals. The ocean really felt alive with the incredible touches added by the developers. May that be the water itself, the plants and bubbles, or the sea life that really made each environment feel like a true ecosystem, brimming with life and character. Never before in a video game up until that point had nature been given such a realistic representation. The animals moved with such fluidity and grace that it really helped immerse the player, and at times felt like you were watching a documentary. Although there are some downfalls, especially when breaking the water, that results in a severe amount of pop-in and lack of texture quality that is simply not present when submerged in the ocean. It's nothing that damns the experience overall, but worth noting nonetheless. The Dreamcast was no stranger to quality racing games, but when it comes to selecting some of the better looking ones, Metropolis Street Racer well deserves a shout out. Coming from the developers who would go on to create the Project Gotham series, MSR presents itself in a confident manner, with each and every car being awarded an immense amount of detail for the time of its release. But what really makes it stand out are the immense environments that are modelled after real life locations. The team actually went and took nearly 35,000 pictures of each city to make sure each was accurately represented. Because of this, every location is literally beaming with detail. May it be a well-known landmark, mailboxes or phone booths, if they were there in real life, they are there in Metropolis Street Racer as well. This amount of detail was truly impressive for the time, and was a major reason why the game was as good as it was. Releasing day one with the Dreamcast was Namco's arcade sensation Soul Calibur. As with most arcade ports for the console, it is an incredible conversion and maintains the same level of detail found within the original release. From the impressive character models and locations, to each and every animation performed by the fighters, it's a game that conveyed the power of Sega's machine right out of the gate, and to this day still looks impressive. It presents itself in a solid 60 FPS, which adds to the intensity of each fight, but it's also the little details that help it stand out, from the way the wind slowly blows through the characters' hair and moves the fabric of their clothing, to the subtle reflections of the special effects dynamically altering the environment in each character model. At the time it was a cut above the rest, with its rivals such as Tekken 3 completely failing in comparison, cementing it as one of the greatest fighters on the system. The first thing that will strike you about Techromancer is the vibrant and intense style it portrays. Each robot on the screen is so intricately designed and absolutely dominates the playing field with their fluid movements and attacks that light up the action in a mesmerizing fashion. Although not the most technically impressive game on the system, it's the way in which the game plays that helps Techromancer carve its visual grandeur. Each robot can be stripped of its armor once taken damage, and serves as an extra visual cue that adds to the realism of each encounter. All of the fights take take place on a 3D plane, allowing players to rotate each environment, which also received the same colourful and vibrant attention to detail as the robots themselves. From blue skies to distant cities and destructible objects, they all help the on-screen action come to life in a way that many fighting games can only dream of. Jet Set Radio was one of the first games to implement what is now a common style of visuals known as cel shading. Although a still picture from Jet Set Radio would appear to be hand-drawn and two-dimensional, the game is 3D and very much alive. It's a simple and vibrant presentation that really helped the world of JSR literally pop off your screen. Throughout the entire game, this distinct sense of style is present, from every environment you'll find yourself in, to each and every character that's animated in a way to seamlessly blend with the detailed backgrounds. The cities are fairly large, each using a wide variety of textures on houses and cars, as well as civilians and various small structures that also fill each location to keep them interesting. Jet Set Radio has a look that just has to be experienced. Although there are a couple of visual imperfections, such as a touch of pop-in and the occasional frame dip, it's not nothing that affects the overall experience. Shenmue is a literal visual feast and a true showcase of how powerful the Sega Dreamcast actually was. Thanks to the more compact areas in the first game, a lot more detail was packed into each environment, which all came together to create an intoxicating atmosphere that in all honesty was slightly missing from its eventual sequel. Adding to this factor was a dynamic day to night cycle, as well as a weather system that alters not only the way the experience looks, but also the way it feels. May it be practicing martial arts in the snow, or trailing the late night bars under the stars. Shenmue is one of those games that will draw you into its world, not only by its story, but its living and breathing world that the Dreamcast brought to life. Even by today's standards, it's hard not to be impressed by Shenmue's sheer amount of visual prowess. At the time, it gave its contemporaries such as Grand Theft Auto a run for their money, and really set an example for many of the open world games that would follow. Quite simply, Shenmue is a beautiful experience that proved the Dreamcast was well and truly capable of creating visual marvels. Challenge was a real achievement on the Dreamcast. It started out life in the arcades and eventually made its way to Sega's home console without skipping a beat. The same experience was on offer with a full 60 frames per second, zero pop-in or slowdown, and with up to 7 cars on the screen at any one time. The visual style brought life to each and every track you would race upon, with detailed backgrounds and textures that would even rival the likes of Gran Turismo for their sheer level of fidelity. But in my opinion, it was the little touches that added to the overall game, from the racing marshals waving their flags, the in-car view that showed your hands on the wheel and reacted dynamically to your inputs, or the real pit crew that changed and repaired your vehicle. It really added to the driving simulation and resulted in one of, if not the best racer on the system. One of the first things you'll notice when booting up Shenmue 2 and stepping off the ship that Ryo travelled to China upon is how the visuals have been noticeably improved when compared to the first entry in the series. How they actually improved upon the original game's visuals is a feat within itself, but certainly the detail has been boosted, which results in a world full of colour and detailed textures that were at times missing from the original game. Most evident are the character models and their faces, namely Ryo's and the main characters you'll be meeting throughout the adventure, which seem a lot more full of life and animation, which really helps portray the narrative in a much more believable way. The environments are now bustling with many Chinese civilians going about their daily trade or business, which results in the streets becoming very crowded. Because of this, it portrays a much more believable city that will immerse the player instantly. Much like the first entry, the day and night cycles as well as the weather systems make a return and dynamically change not only the look of each environment but the feel of them as well. It all comes together to create a unique atmosphere that the game can call its own. But all of this does come at a cost though, as the experience is prone to occasional frame dips, but nothing that truly takes away from the adventure. Well, that does it for today's video. Don't forget to hit subscribe to stay up to date on future videos, and as always, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I'll catch you next time.